Welcome to our channel. Today's lecture is dedicated to Surya, the sun god. We will trace his long and challenging journey from a child rejected by his mother to the all-seeing cosmic eye. Along the way, we will uncover the price this great luminary had to pay for his unbearable heat. We will explore the circumstances of his encounters with the ruler Gross Indra and the shadowy demon Rahu. You will learn how solar energy invisibly governs our physical health, shapes intellect and inner strength, and why Surya's divine gifts sometimes bring more destruction than benefit to their bearers. I want to express sincere gratitude to everyone who leaves kind comments and warm wishes under the videos. I always read them and am endlessly thankful for such genuine feedback. Special thanks also go to those who support the channel and help it grow. Your participation makes these lectures possible. Now, make yourself comfortable. Set aside the worries of the day. Our story takes us deep into ancient times, to an era before the familiar light appeared in the sky, when everything was just preparing to be born. My name is Michael Reynolds. You're watching Ancient Secrets. Thanks for watching my content. I'd appreciate your subscription and like. Enjoy the video. At the very beginning, when the structure of the universe was only taking shape, there was only Aditi. This name is complex and translates as unbound or limitless. She was not just a mother goddess, but the very space itself, the primordial medium in which anything can exist. According to the Rig Veda texts, Aditi decided to give birth to offspring who would govern the laws of this universe. The process began, and Aditi gave birth to 8 sons. 7 were perfect. They were the Adityas, deities of the highest order. Among them were well-known figures like Varuna, the keeper of cosmic law, and Mitra, the protector of friendship and contracts. They shone brightly and were magnificent. Proud as any mother, Aditi immediately presented these 7 to the assembly of gods, saying, "Here is the elite, those who will hold the sky." But there was a problem: the 8th child. The last fruit of her womb was strange. The text describe it rather harshly and even with some disdain. It was not a baby in the usual sense. It was something formless, lacking signs of life, spherical, a smooth, motionless object. No arms, no legs, no breath, just a lifeless egg. In ancient verses, this being was called Mortanda. The name itself is like a diagnosis. It comes from the words Mrita, meaning dead, and Anda, meaning egg. Born from a dead egg. Quite ironic, isn't it? The one we now consider the most alive object in the sky, the source of all biological activity on Earth, was initially written off as a defective product. Aditi, looking at his motionless sphere, was not sentimental. She didn't care for it. She decided the 8th son was unviable and therefore useless for divine affairs. According to the hymns, she simply cast it away, rejected it, left it to die, though one might wonder, how could something already lifeless die? The 7 brothers went to the heavens to enjoy immortality and power, while Mortanda remained lying in cosmic emptiness, hardened by his own mother. But the story doesn't end here, or we wouldn't be discussing it now. What Aditi considered a defect was simply another form of existence. After all, what is the sun? It is not a humanoid walking around shaking hands. It is a sphere, a blazing orb. The fact that it was born without limbs was not a deformity, but its true nature. Later, according to legend, and Aditi somehow sensed something was wrong, or perhaps other forces intervened, the lifeless egg was revived. Divine craftsmen, sometimes associated with Vishvakarma or Tvashtri, took on the task of shaping this object. They began to mold and trim it. Suddenly, it became clear that inside this lifeless shell was a colossal, uncontrollable power. When the excess was removed, it burst into flame. It shone so brightly that it was impossible to look at. The one thought dead turned out to be the most alive of all brothers. He became Vivasvan, the Shining One. He became Surya. Let's pause for a moment and reflect on this. This myth holds a profound, even therapeutic idea. Surya is the only god we physically see every day. We can close our eyes to Vishnu or Shiva, considering them abstractions, but ignoring the sun when it burns overhead is nearly impossible. This very real god begins his journey with rejection. His story is that of a cosmic, ugly duckling. He was misunderstood even by his own mother because his nature differed from the norm. Gods were expected to look like humans, with arms and legs, to hold weapons and receive offerings. Surya was different. His function wasn't to sit on a throne, but to burn, to be a ball of fire. His flaw became his greatest strength. Had he been born like Varuna or Mitra, we would be left without light. There's another interesting detail often overlooked. Why was he called born from the dead? Ancient sages perhaps intuitively understood the nature of matter. Life in the universe often arises from processes that seem destructive or lifeless to us. The sun is a nuclear reactor, a constant explosion. There is no biological life there. Plasma physics reigns, harmful to all living things on direct contact. Yet this so-called dead, fiery energy makes grass grow and our hearts beat. Life is born from non-life. Mortanda had to be dead to give life. Later, Aditi recognized her son, but as we will see, Surya's relationship with his family remained, to say the least, strained. The 7 Adityas were always together, a group, a collective. Surya was always alone, a solitary traveler, endlessly moving in a circle without the right to stop. A birth trauma or a great destiny, likely both. After taking shape, Surya did not immediately gain the right to control his power at will. In those distant times described in the Rigveda hymns, the world's governance structure was different from later texts. The main clients of his light were Varuna and Mitra. It was a kind of contract. Surya was granted the right to cross the sky daily, and in return, he served as a universal detector of falsehood. If we analyze ancient prayers to the sky, we notice Surya is often mentioned alongside the concept of Rita, the universal law of harmony and cosmic order. Thus, Surya's light was not just a flow of heat, but a physical manifestation of truth. He was officially called Chakshus, which simply means eye. But this was no ordinary eye. It was the eye of the gods, rising each morning from the ocean to inspect their domains. Varuna was the cosmic judge, ensuring rivers did not overflow and stars did not fall without command. Mitra oversaw social bonds, contracts, and honesty among people. It was logical that to maintain control on such a scale, a witness present everywhere at once was needed. Surya perfectly fit this role. He became the first surveillance system in history with no blind spots. And, most uncomfortable for wrongdoers, there was no delete button. Let's understand what it's like to live in a world where the sky itself is a spy. When Surya's first rays touch the earth, it means the cameras are on. In Vedic society, honesty was not just a moral choice, but a matter of survival under this all-seeing gaze. You could not commit a crime without being noticed by Surya, who penetrates every crevice. If a person broke a vow made in front of witnesses or deceived their trading partners, Varuval reported it through the daily account of his eye. This creates an entirely different dynamic in the relationship with the deity. This is not a god to whom you can simply offer a gift and ask to overlook your misdeeds. Surya is impartial. He does not care whom he illuminates, the wise or the thief. It is precisely his cold objectivity that makes his testimony indisputable in the court of the gods. Texts say that Surya sees both good and evil. In his light, there are no shadows where ill intentions can hide. Here lies the first serious drama in the life of our hero. He is a witness who has no right to intervene. He sees injustice, deception, and the pain inflicted on the weak. But his role is only to record. He is a passive observer, forced to carry the knowledge of every human fault without the ability to close his eyes. In essence, Surya is a hostage to his own vision. He knows no rest because when he sets in one hemisphere, he immediately rises in the other, continuing his endless watch. Interestingly, Varuna had thousands of earthly spies called Spashas. They roamed among humans in human form, eavesdropping on conversations. But Surya was their supreme coordinator. While the Spashas might have missed something, Surya saw the entire structure of sin. He perceived not only the act itself, but also the shadow it cast on the soul. In Sanskrit, there is a deep connection between light and truth, known as Satya. Surya is the physical embodiment of this link. When we use the phrase to shed light on a matter, we unknowingly echo Surya's ancient function. Yet there is something unsettling about this. A deity who never blinks lacks empathy in the human sense. He simply reveals things as they truly are. In darkness, a piece of rope might look like a snake, and an old enemy could pretend to be a friend. But when Surya appears, any illusion shatters. Naturally, he's the enemy of all who build their lives on deceit and concealment. Could Surya be appeased to look away at a crucial moment? Vedic hymns say no. He is incorruptible because at this stage of his existence, he has no personal desires or ambitions. He is a pure function. It is only later that he begins to clash with other gods and develop complex family relationships. For now, he remains a perfect instrument in the hands of the great gods. Let's examine how this total illumination affected everyday life at the time. Every important ritual, every major deal was conducted exclusively in the presence of the sun. This was considered legally binding. If Surya saw you shake hands with a partner, the agreement was sealed on a cosmic level. To break it was to challenge the very order of the universe. But is such transparency an absolute blessing? On one hand, it guarantees safety and order. On the other, it means a complete loss of privacy before eternity. Surya knows everything about us, even what we fear to admit to ourselves. He sees our intentions before they become words. This relentless role as an eternal informer in others' hands gradually began to change Surya's nature. He slowly started to develop his own will. He no longer wanted to be just Varuna's eye. He wanted to be an independent player. However, his nature played a cruel trick on him. His radiance, which had helped the gods in their investigations, became so intense that it caused unbearable discomfort to those around him, especially his loved ones. Living close to absolute truth, which was also burning hot, proved nearly impossible. According to ancient legends, Surya was married to Sanjna, daughter of the divine craftsman Vishvakarma. The problem was that Surya's brilliance was so intense that being near him was physically unbearable. Sanjna literally suffered from his presence. This led to her fleeing, as discussed in earlier stories. But our focus is not on the family drama, but on the technical solution to this problem. When Vishvakarma learned that his daughter could not endure her husband's heat, he acted not as a diplomat, but as a mechanic. In Indian mythology, Vishvakarma is responsible for all material creations, from the palaces of the gods to the most complex mechanisms of the universe. His approach to Surya was purely technical. he proposed that Surya undergo a procedure that modern folklore researchers might call cosmic surgery or even refinement. Surya, realizing that his excessive power made him lonely and unbearable, agreed. This was highly unusual behavior for a supreme deity, to acknowledge that one's perfection is flawed and allow someone to alter it. The process took place in Vishvakarma's workshop, located on the sacred land of Shakidvipa. Surya was placed on a special rotating machine called the Frami in the texts. It was a powerful device capable of withstanding the heat of the celestial body. Vishvakarma began to carve Surya, removing excess layers of his radiant form. This was not a mere cosmetic procedure. It was a reduction of the very essence of the god. According to legend, Vishvakarma removed exactly 1/8 of Surya's brilliance. One can only imagine the temperature in that workshop and the strength required by the craftsman to avoid evaporating during the process. Interestingly, after this operation, Surya changed not only internally but also externally. Before, he was more like a shapeless energy mass, a sort of lifeless egg that had just begun to glow. Vishvakarma gave him more defined features, making his appearance more acceptable to other gods and humans. But what happened to the parts of divine light that were cut away? Here the mythology takes a sharp turn, showing us that energy of such power does not simply vanish. Vishvakarma, being a prudent master, collected the solar shavings. From these remnants of Surya's scorching heat, he forged the most powerful weapons for other gods. From one part came the Trishula, Shiva's trident. From another, the Sudarsana chakra, Vishnu's fiery disc. Also created were the Vajra for Indra and the mighty spear Vel for Kartikeya. It turns out that the most formidable weapons in the Hindu pantheon are essentially concentrated fragments of Surya's light, which was too intense even for him. This invites reflection on the nature of power and strength. What is a burden and a hindrance for one becomes a tool of protection or destruction in another's hands. After the procedure, Surya became moderate. His light ceased to be blinding chaos and turned into an ordered blessing. He was able to return to Sanjna, and his presence no longer caused harm. However, it is worth considering the price of this compromise. To fit into the structure of society, to become a good husband and a comprehensible god, Surya had to give up part of his original nature. This is a classic story of adaptation. We all, to some extent, trim our edges as we try to meet the expectations of others or the demands of reality. Isn't it ironic that the great Surya, symbol of purity and truth, became more human only after being shaped by a tool? Researchers believe this myth encodes the transition from primal elemental forces of nature to more organized cultic forms of divinity. Surya ceased to be a mere celestial object and became a personal deity. But with this, he also became vulnerable. Let's explore how this transformation affected the way people perceived him. After his brilliance was limited, ancient artists and sculptors began to depict him in human form. He gained attributes, clothing, and most importantly, a recognizable face. He ceased to be just an eye in the sky, too intense to look at, and became a deity to whom people could turn with their requests. His worship grew precisely when he agreed to become less overwhelming. People fear absolute light because it is impossible to exist within it, but they cherish light that warms without burning. In this story, Vishvakarma acts as a kind of first psychoanalyst and plastic surgeon combined. He recognized the root of the problem, the incompatibility of divine power with earthly or even celestial relationships. Soothing the anger of Surya's wife was impossible with mere words. A radical transformation of the very source of the conflict was necessary. After this event, Surya firmly established his status as a benefactor. His movement across the sky became more rhythmic and predictable. But do not think he became entirely gentle. Even after Vishvakarma's intervention and the removal of part of his stellar mass, Surya remained a source of colossal, nearly unbearable energy. Traveling alone across the sky, pouring this radiation onto an unprepared world would have been irresponsible. He needed not just a driver, but a buffer, someone capable of withstanding Surya's intense heat while looking forward without blinking. Fate provided him with a perfect candidate whose birth story is even more dramatic and unusual than that of the sun god himself. This character is named Aruna, which means reddish or color of the morning dawn. His birth is a classic example of the consequences of envy and impatience. The story begins with two sisters, Vinata and Kadru, who were wives of the ancient sage Kashyapa. In those times, population growth was decided in a unique way. The sage offered his wives the choice of their offspring. Kadru, the pragmatic woman, asked for 1,000 serpent sons, mighty Nagas. Vinata, driven by ambition, declared she wanted only 2 sons, but such who would surpass in strength all 1,000 sons of her rival. Kashyapa withdrew to the forest, leaving the wives with 2 incubators. A long time passed, according to the texts, 500 years. Kadru's eggs hatched successfully, filling the world with hissing serpents. Vinata, however, watched her 2 giant eggs lying completely still, no cracks, no sound. Naturally, anxiety mixed with envy of her fertile sister began to gnaw at her. Why was her house already full of children while hers had only shells? Unable to bear the tension, she made a fateful mistake. She decided to help nature and, driven by curiosity, carefully broke one of the eggs. What she saw shocked her. The child inside was alive and incredibly beautiful, shining like molten gold. But his time had not yet come. The upper part of his body, head, chest, powerful arms, was perfectly formed. The lower part, however, had not yet taken shape. His legs and hips existed only as a projection without physical form. Vinata's impatience literally deprived her son of the ability to walk on earth. This special and mighty infant was named Aruna. In the texts, he is often called Anuru, meaning without hips. Here unfolds a scene quite unusual for human relationships. Instead of crying, Aruna, wise from the very first moment of life, addressed his mother with stern words. He foretold the consequences of her action. He said roughly this: "Because you rushed and disrupted my development, you will face a long period of service to the very rival you envied." A rather harsh start to family life, wouldn't you say? However, he added that the second son, still maturing in the remaining egg, who would become the great Garuda, would one day free her from this servitude, provided she shows patience and does not interfere again. After this emotional dialogue, Aruna, using his divine power, rose into the sky. It was difficult for him to remain on the earth's surface without the ability to walk, but in the heavens there was a role perfectly suited to his nature. The gods, seeing his radiance and resistance to heat, appointed him as Surya's charioteer. This appointment carries deep physical and symbolic meaning. Aruna sits at the front of the chariot. His broad chest and strong torso shield the world from Surya at the most dangerous moment, the moment of sunrise. Aruna is the morning dawn. Have you noticed that at dawn, the sun appears red and you can look at it without pain? That is Aruna. His reddish glow acts as a filter. He absorbs the first, most aggressive wave of solar energy, softening it to make it suitable for living beings. The picture is remarkable. The fastest god in the universe, Surya, is driven by a charioteer without legs. This is a brilliant metaphor. Light needs steps. It flies. Aruna, deprived of the ability to walk on earth, finds his true purpose in flight. His disability on earth becomes an advantage in the sky, where legs are unnecessary and only sharp eyes and strong hands are needed to hold the reins of 7 wild horses. Every morning we first see Aruna. He is always ahead, a herald warning the darkness that it is time to leave and informing people that the Lord of the Day is near. In Indian tradition, there is even a special dawn greeting dedicated to Aruna rather than Surya himself. Without Aruna's mercy, who acts as a shield, the sun's appearance would be a blinding blow. Aruna functions like a pair of sunglasses for the entire planet. The relationship between him and Surya is a silent tandem. Surya is behind, Aruna in front. One provides energy, the other sets the course. Despite his disability and the curse placed on his mother, Aruna is considered a symbol of hope. Dawn is a promise of a new beginning. Even if you are born incomplete, even if your own mother hastened and spoiled your life, you can still find your place at the very top of the universe, steering the chariot of time. One might think Surya's life would settle into a calm rhythm. He has the perfect charioteer, Aruna, who tempers his excess heat. He has family recognition and clearly defined duties. But as history shows, even celestial lights have bad days that stretch into eternity. We now approach a moment that explains one of the most frightening astronomical phenomena, the eclipse. The cause of this event lies not in the mechanics of planetary motion, but in a personal vendetta sparked by our hero's excessive vigilance. The events unfold during the famous distribution of Amrita, the nectar of immortality. We won't delve into the process of churning the ocean now, as that is a story for another time. What matters is the banquet itself. The gods lined up to receive their share of eternal life. Everything proceeded orderly and nobly until an impostor slipped among them. A demon possessing extraordinary cunning disguised himself as a god and sat at the common table. By irony or fate, this infiltrator took a seat between the two brightest figures, Surya and Chandra. This was a fatal mistake in disguise. Surya and Chandra are the cosmic eyes, the universe's spotlights. As we recall, Surya's function is to see the truth. When it was this guest's turn, Surya immediately realized, this is not a god. The aura is wrong. The vibrations are off. The gaze too greedy. Surya is a kind of spectral analyzer. He cannot be deceived by appearances. He did not engage in debate. He did what he always did, revealed the truth. Surya and Chandra exchanged a glance and signaled Vishnu, who was pouring the nectar. This was the disguised enemy. Vishnu's reaction was swift. His discus, the Sudarshana chakra, hung in the air and severed the impostor's head. But there is a catch. The demon had already taken a sip. The nectar touched his throat but did not reach his stomach. This created a unique paradox that gave birth to the demon Rahu. We will explore the nature of Rahu and Ketu, their tragic story, and their influence on our destinies in a future lecture, as this myth deserves a thorough and separate discussion. For now, it is important to understand one key point. This demon survived, but lost his physical body. Most interestingly, his anger was not directed at Vishnu, who delivered the blow. The executioner was simply doing his duty. Rahu's wrath fell upon the witness, the one who revealed the deception. Rahu believed that Surya had broken an unspoken code. He was just trying to survive, to become equal to the gods, but the sun deprived him of his wholeness. From that moment, Rahu vowed never to let Surya live in peace. Thus was born the legend of eclipses. Rahu, now a shadowy entity, eternally chases Surya across the sky. At certain times, when their orbits intersect, he catches his adversary. This is a classic story of the informer and the wrongdoer, scaled up to a cosmic level. Surya acted rightly. He protected the divine resource from theft, but justice, as it turns out, can be harsh. Rahu periodically swallows Surya, plunging the world into darkness. However, since the demon has no body, the swallowed sun cannot be held inside and soon slips back out, whole and unharmed. For Surya, this is not fatal but humiliating, a reminder that every action has its price. Surya represents absolute law. He could not remain silent because his nature is light, and light cannot hide darkness. He is simply incapable of compromising his conscience. Rahu embodies grievance, a distorted sense of injustice that haunts us for years. For astrologers, this moment is pivotal. The conjunction of Surya and Rahu in a horoscope is often seen as a soul's eclipse, a period of confusion and illusion. Interestingly, this myth explains the ancient fear of eclipses. It is not just an astronomical event when the moon covers the sun. It is a moment when chaos triumphs over order, when the chief guardian of law is temporarily overthrown. During these moments, the world holds its breath, because the all-seeing eye is momentarily blinded. Surya becomes vulnerable. He, who is accustomed to hunting for truth, becomes the victim. Yet, even in this eternal chase, there is balance. Rahu gained the status of a Graha, a shadow planet, which in Indian tradition holds influence equal to Surya himself. His cunning and the fact that he touched the nectar elevated him. In a way, Surya, by exposing Rahu, inadvertently helped create a new powerful player in the celestial map. Had he remained silent, the demon might have gone unnoticed and history would have taken a different path. But Surya's intervention led to the enemy's elevation to the heavens, making him an eternal neighbor. Now they share the same ecliptic, reminding us that our enemies often become inseparable parts of our own journey. We cannot simply escape the consequences of our decisions, even if they were right. Surya continues to shine, but he knows the shadow is always nearby, waiting for its moment. In a previous lecture, we touched on the figure of Samba, son of Krishna, involved in a tragic episode. Disguised as a pregnant woman, he gave birth to an iron pestle, which led to a massacre where grass turned into deadly weapons. We examined that catastrophe in detail and won't repeat it here. However, according to the Samba Purana and other texts, the curse of the sages had a personal side affecting Samba's health, leading him not to death but to the feet of Surya. Let's explore what happened to Samba before his clan was destroyed. Samba was known for his remarkable beauty, inheriting his father Krishna's features. But he used his charm not for good deeds, but for mockery. His arrogance offended many, especially the sage Narada, or in some versions, Durvasa. Samba foolishly mocked the appearance of the ascetics, their emaciated bodies, tangled hair, and aged skin, contrasting it with his youthful vigor. When the sages cast their curse, it struck Samba from two sides. On one hand, the iron pestle that doomed his dynasty. On the other, the sudden loss of what he so proudly possessed. His magnificent body began to be covered with terrible sores. Different sources describe this as leprosy or a severe skin disease. The one who was once the epitome of beauty in Dwaraka became an outcast, repulsive to behold. In despair, Samba turned to his father, but Krishna, as an avatar of Vishnu, explained a harsh truth. The curse of the Brahmins is a karmic lesson that cannot be simply undone by divine will. It must be endured. However, Krishna gave him guidance. He said that in the universe there is only one specialist in such matters. If Vishnu supports life and Shiva destroys, then Surya is responsible for the health of the physical body and the purity of the skin. Thus began Samba's path of redemption. He left the luxurious palaces of Dwaraka and went to the sacred grove of Mitravana on the banks of the Chandrapaga River, modern-day Chenab. Imagine the contrast: a prince accustomed to luxury now standing in water, offering prayers under the scorching sun, which only worsened his painful skin. Legends say his penance lasted 12 years. Surya, seeing the youth's sincerity and suffering, finally showed mercy. He appeared not as a scorching fire, but as a healer. Surya cleansed Samba's body of disease, restoring his former appearance. But this healing was not a gift without conditions. Surya commanded Samba to build a temple and spread the cult of sun worship so that others suffering from ailments would know where to turn. Here the story takes an interesting turn, linking mythology with the real history of architecture. Samba built a magnificent sun temple in a place later called Sambapur. Many scholars associate it with ancient Multan. But a problem arose. The local Brahmins refused to perform services in the new temple. Reasons varied, from Samba's ritual impurity due to the curse to the specific nature of Surya's cult, which required special knowledge. Following Surya's advice, Samba sought help from priests across the sea from the land of Shakadvipa, presumably the region of modern Iran or Central Asia. These priests were called Mago Brahmins. Historians see this as a direct reference to the Zoroastrian Magi who worshipped fire and light. Thus, Samba's personal tragedy led to the integration of new traditions into Indian culture. This episode reveals Surya as the giver of health. In Ayurveda and Vedic astrology, Surya always governs vitality, immunity, and the skin. Ancient texts remarkably anticipated the connection that modern science confirms through the effects of ultraviolet light on vitamin D synthesis and the treatment of skin diseases.
Samba's bitter experience proved that if you insult wisdom, you lose beauty, and only the source of all light in the world can restore it. While this episode tells a story of personal salvation and healing, the next chronicles of the solar cult take us to a realm where human ambitions clash with harsh reality. We move to the eastern coast of India, to the state of Odisha by the Bay of Bengal. There stands a stone giant that has served for centuries as a landmark for sailors and a mystery for engineers, the Sun Temple at Konark. But behind its majestic facade lies a legend that chills the heart, quite unlike the warmth of the sun deity. Construction of this complex began in the 10th century under the order of King Narasimhadeva I. The design was grand and ambitious. The goal was to transform stone into an exact replica of Surya's celestial chariot. 12 pairs of massive wheels, 7 stone horses straining toward the sky, all intricately carved with the finest detail. The project was led by the great architect Bisu Maharana, who worked alongside 1,000 of the finest craftsmen of the era. With such resources, success seemed assured. Yet, construction dragged on for 12 long years. The problem arose at the final stage. The masters could not install the Kalasha, the keystone at the dome's summit that was meant to hold the entire structure of the main sanctuary together. Each time they raised the massive stone to the top, it either collapsed or threatened to bring down the walls. An engineering dead end. The king, exhausted by delays and expenses, lost patience. He issued an ultimatum. If the Kalasha was not set by the next sunrise,
all 1,200 craftsmen would be executed. The atmosphere in the workers' camp that night was far from productive. People said their farewells. Bisu Maharana, the chief architect, was in deep despair. He understood he had let down not only the king, but also his people, who now faced death. At that moment, a boy of about 12 appeared on the site. His name was Dharmadpada, Bisu Maharana's son. The catch was that the father had never seen his son before. Bisu had left for the construction site when his wife was pregnant and had spent all 12 years immersed in work at Konark. Dharmadpada had grown up hearing stories about his great father and had finally decided to find him. He came to bring food and introduce himself, only to arrive at what felt like his own funeral. Upon learning of the dire threat, the boy asked his father to show him the plans and calculations. At first, the masters only gave a bitter smile. The best minds in the kingdom had wrestled with the problem for years. What could a child do? But Dharmadpada, with a fresh perspective and perhaps an innate genius, quickly spotted an error in the weight and balance calculations. He proposed an unconventional solution. Under cover of night, while the guards dozed and the craftsmen awaited dawn in terror, the 12-year-old climbed to the temple's peak and adjusted the placement of the stone. The kalasha fit perfectly into place, the structure locked into completion. The temple was finished. It seemed like a happy ending. Life saved, the temple standing, and the father reunited with his brilliant son. But here the story takes a dark turn toward realism. The craftsmen, realizing what had happened, grew even more afraid. They reasoned, if the king learned that a 12-year-old boy had done in one night what 1,200 professionals could not do in years, he would execute them anyway. He would punish them for incompetence, while the glory would go to the boy. This collective fear turned into pressure. Those whom Dharmadpada had just saved began whispering that the boy's existence threatened their reputations and their lives. Bisu Maharana faced a terrible choice: the life of his only son or the lives of 1,200 comrades. The situation reached a deadlock. Seeing his father's torment and understanding the harsh reality, Dharmadpada made a decision himself. He spoke a phrase that became legendary in Wadishi. What is more important, the life of one or the life of 1,200? At dawn, as the first rays of Surya touched the stone, Dharmadpada climbed to the temple summit one last time and leapt down into the waters of the Chandrabhaga river, which then flowed right beside the sanctuary walls. The life of the gifted boy ended at the very moment his creation came alive under the sunlight. When the king arrived in the morning, he saw the completed temple. The craftsmen kept their lives and their secrets, but Bisu Maharana, broken with grief, soon withdrew from public life. This legend leaves us with a heavy question. Surya is the god who grants life and light, but why did his greatest temple demand such a sacrifice? Scholars believe this myth encodes the idea that perfection requires total self-sacrifice. Art stands above the creator's individuality. The temple at Konark still stands today, though partly in ruins, resembling a massive chariot frozen in time. Locals say that Dharmadpada's spirit still wanders among the ruins, a reminder that talent can sometimes become a burden. This temple was never used for regular worship as planned. It is believed that the sanctity was marred by the voluntary departure of an innocent child. The energy of the place changed. This teaches us that any project, no matter how great, built on fear and envy, cannot be a pure vessel for divine light. Here, Surya appears not as an active participant, but as an observer. He accepted the temple, but also the sacrifice. His chariot continues its journey, leaving people to deal with the consequences of their own ambitions. While Bisu Maharana mourned his son and the king celebrated victory, a very different story was unfolding elsewhere in India. We tend to think of education as a static process, a quiet audience, a library, a sage seated beneath a banyan tree in the lotus pose. But Surya, as we have seen, is a dynamic deity, and his methods of imparting knowledge are correspondingly extreme. The story we now explore concerns the emergence of one of the most important parts of the Vedic canon, and the man who dared to challenge the traditional education system. His name was Yajnavalkya. In his youth, he was a student of his uncle, the great sage Vaishampayana, custodian of the Yajur Veda, the sacred texts detailing sacrificial rituals. Our hero was a brilliant student, but, as is often the case with geniuses, difficult to get along with. He asked uncomfortable questions, argued with his teacher, and openly displayed intellectual superiority over his peers. The conflict reached a peak after an unpleasant incident at the royal court, whereby Vaishampayana was to perform a ritual of repentance but shifted the responsibility onto his students. Yajnavalkya claimed he could accomplish the task better than the entire group of less capable students. Offended by such arrogance, the teacher lost his temper and demanded that Yajnavalkya leave the ashram immediately. But before departing, Yajnavalkya set a strict condition. "Return to me all the knowledge I have imparted to you. You have no right to take it with you." What followed was a mystical and rather physical process. Using yogic techniques, Yajnavalkya literally expelled the knowledge he had received. The texts describe this as vomiting, a crude but accurate metaphor. He expelled everything he had absorbed over years of study. The other students, unwilling to let this precious wisdom be lost, transformed into partridge-like birds called titiri, and pecked up what Yajnavalkya had cast out. This is how the Taittiriya Samhita, or the Black Yajurveda, came into being. The term black here does not refer to magic, but to the mixed and structured nature of the text, where rules and commentary are intertwined like food in a stomach. Yajnavalkya was left empty, alone, without a teacher, without knowledge, rejected by the academic community of his time. But his ambition remained. He decided he needed a new guru, one free from human weaknesses and intrigues. He looked up to the sky and chose Surya. The logic was simple. Surya sees everything. He is the source of light and therefore the source of enlightenment. Yajnavalkya began to pray, calling on the sun to become his mentor. Surya appeared but was skeptical. He said something like this: "Listen, I am honored by your choice, but look at my schedule. I cannot stop for even a second. If I slow down to explain a chapter of the Vedas, the world will fall into chaos, seasons will laugh, time will be disrupted. I have no time for lectures, I am always in motion." For an ordinary person, this would have been a polite refusal. For our hero, it was a challenge. He proposed a daring plan. "Don't stop, I will move with you." Surya agreed. He took the form of a horse so his speech would be faster and clearer, and continued his journey. Yajnavalkya rose and flew ahead of the chariot, facing Surya but moving backward. Let's delve into the physics of this process. The student flies at tremendous speed, overcoming the resistance of the cosmic wind, facing the blazing sun, all while trying to memorize complex Sanskrit texts. Surya dictated knowledge at a galloping pace. There was no chance to ask for repetition or to take notes. The information entered our hero's consciousness directly, under immense pressure. The result of this extreme training was the emergence of the white Yajur Veda. Why white? Because it was received directly from the sun itself. It was pure, bright, and well organized. Unlike the black version, here the mantras were clearly separated from the commentaries. This was knowledge not reinterpreted by others, but taken straight from the original source. In the texts,
there is a term ayatyama, which can be translated as fresh, untouched by time. This is precisely the kind of knowledge Yajnavalkya received. Surya taught him things unknown even to the wisest elders on earth. But this teaching method also left its mark on the character of the text itself. The White Yajur-Veda is dynamic. It is full of the energy of action. When Yajnavalkya returned to earth, it caused a sensation. He brought a system that was more logical and coherent than what his uncle had taught. Naturally, the old guard, including Vaishampayana, initially met this with resistance. But it was impossible to win debates against a man who had out-argued the wind and withstood the gaze of the sun. Yajnavalkya became the greatest sage of his era, author of the famous Upanishads. This story beautifully illustrates that Surya is not just physical heat. In Indian thought, light is always identical to consciousness. Surya represents the supreme intellect that cannot tolerate stagnation. The knowledge he imparts demands that the student stay alert. You cannot learn from the sun by being passive. You must move at the same speed, otherwise you will either burn or fall behind. Interestingly, followers of this school call themselves Vayinas, from the word Vayi, meaning horse. This is a reminder of the form in which Surya delivered his teachings: speed, power, and force. These are the characteristics of this knowledge. Thus, Surya rehabilitated Yajnavalkya, transforming him from an outcast into a prophet. He showed that truth is accessible to anyone willing to step out of their comfort zone and risk their life for it. But there is another side to the sun's generosity. Surya is not only the abstract light of knowledge, he is also gold. In alchemy and astrology, the sun is always associated with this noble metal. And once Surya decided to gift his favorite not a book or a mantra, but a real machine for producing wealth, enclosed in the form of a precious stone. This artifact became known in history as Syamantaka. The main figure in this story is a noble Yadava named Satrajit. He lived in Dwarka, close to Krishna himself, but his main passion was not politics, it was devotion to Surya. Satrajit was fanatical. He would stand for hours on the ocean shore, watching the rising sun and reciting hymns. According to tradition, his devotion bore fruit. One day, Surya appeared to him personally. At first, Satrajit did not even realize that a deity in human form stood before him. Surya shone so brightly that his outlines blurred. Being a straightforward man, Satrajit asked, "O Lord, I have worshipped you for years, but have only seen a fiery orb. May I see your true form without this blinding radiance?" Surya, showing kindness, removed a shining pendant from his neck and set it aside. It turned out that the main source of unbearable brightness was the stone the god wore as an ornament. This stone was Syamantaka. Seeing his devotees' awe, Surya made a grand gesture and gifted the stone to Satrajit. It seemed like a blessing to live by, but the gift came with specific conditions. The stone was not just a jewel. Every day, it produced 8 pahar of gold. Converting ancient measures to modern ones, that's about 70 kilograms of pure gold daily. Moreover, the land where the stone was kept was protected from drought, epidemics, and natural disasters, but only on the condition that the owner was pure in soul and observed all rituals. Satrajit, wearing the stone around his neck, returned to Dwarka. He shone so brightly that the townspeople took him for the sun god himself come for a stroll. When the excitement died down and everyone learned about the stone's properties, a political dilemma arose. Krishna, the de facto leader of the Yadavas and the pragmatist, made a reasonable proposal to Satrajit. He said, "Listen, such a powerful resource should not belong to a private individual. 70 kilograms of gold per day is the budget of an entire state. Give the stone to the king of Ugrasena. Let it work for the good of all the people."
Here the darker side of the solar gift revealed itself. Satyajit, who had been a devout ascetic until yesterday, instantly turned into a suspicious miser. The shine of gold clouded his judgment. He refused Krishna's offer. Moreover, he began spreading rumors that Krishna wanted to seize the stone out of envy. Thus, Surya's gift, intended to protect against misfortune, became the cause of division among the elite of Dwarka. The story then unfolds like a bad detective tale. Satyajit had a brother named Prasena, who was apparently not very wise and somewhat vain. One day, Prasena borrowed the stone from his brother, wore it around his neck, and went hunting. This was a fatal mistake. The Syamantaka required an owner of absolute ritual purity, and hunting, taking animal life, blood, and dirt, was incompatible. The stone did not forgive this. In the forest, Prasena was attacked by a lion. The beast, likely attracted by the stone's shine, killed the rider but did not eat the horse or Prasena himself. Instead, it grabbed the stone in its jaws and ran to its cave. However, the lion did not get far. It encountered an even more formidable figure, Jambavan, the immortal Bear King, a veteran of the Rama War who lived in these forests in deep seclusion. Jambavan killed the lion with a single blow, took the shining treasure, and carried it to his cave to gift it to his young son. Meanwhile, panic spread in Dwarka. Prasena did not return. Grief-stricken and paranoid, Satyajit publicly accused Krishna of murder. Krishna had requested the stone, but Satyajit had refused. Now his brother was missing and the stone was gone. The conclusion seemed obvious. Krishna's reputation was at stake. To clear his name, he personally led a search expedition. Krishna followed Prasena's trail, found his body, then tracked the lion's remains and finally reached the bear's cave. There he saw an astonishing sight. The legendary Syamantaka stone, capable of enriching an empire, lay in a cradle, and Jambavan's little son was playing with it as if it were a rattle. But it wasn't easy to retrieve the stone. Jambavan, old and mighty, did not recognize Krishna and thought him a thief. A battle ensued that lasted 28 days. It was a clash of two titans. Only after nearly a month, battered and exhausted, did Jambavan realize that before him was no mere mortal, but the incarnation of Rama, whom he had served thousands of years ago. The bear bowed before Krishna, returned the stone, and as a sign of reconciliation, gave his daughter Jambavati in marriage. Krishna returned to Dwarka, victorious. He restored the stone to Satyajit, proving his innocence. Satyajit, realizing the grave mistake he had made by accusing an innocent man, was horrified. Trying to make amends, he gave Krishna not only the stone, which Krishna nobly declined to take back, leaving it with its owner, but also his daughter Satyabhama. What can we learn from this story? Surya gave a gift that is neutral in itself. The stone is simply a concentrator of energy, but human nature was not ready for such a test. Satyajit passed the test of poverty and prayer, but failed the test of wealth. The solar stone revealed his greed, fear, and mistrust of others. The Syamantaka brought gold, but robbed peace. Ultimately, to foreshadow, the stone was lost to Satyajit. He was killed by other conspirators who desired to seize the treasure. This is a cautionary tale showing that the blessings of the gods can become a curse if a person lacks the wisdom to manage them. Surya provides energy, but the direction of that energy is determined by us. Now that we have explored the material aspects of solar energy, let us turn to something more subtle and elevated. Surya is not only about gold and physical health, it is also about sound, the sound capable of awakening consciousness. In earlier discussions, Surya appeared as a punishing eye or a source of physical vitality. Here, we see a different aspect, known as Savitar.
let's uncover what lies behind this name. In the Rig Veda, Surya is often called Savitar, which can be translated as the awakener or inspirer. This is not merely the disk hanging in the sky, it is the force that compels us to open our eyes each morning, not just physically, but mentally as well. Savitar is the divine alarm clock for our intellect. Its main function is to activate consciousness, rousing it from slumber and inertia. This function is best illustrated by the story of the origin of perhaps the most famous sound formula in human history, the Gayatri Mantra. The central figure here is not a god, but a man whose persistence bordered on obsession. This is the story of the sage Vishvamitra. Ironically, he was not born a Brahmin, he was a king, a warrior named Kaushika, used to solving problems with a sword. But when he confronted the spiritual power of the sage Vasistha, he realized that all his armies and weapons were mere dust compared to the strength of asceticism and knowledge. The king understood that brute force loses to the power of the spirit. Deeply affected, Vishvamitra set out to achieve the impossible, to change his social class and become a Brahmin not by birth but by merit. He withdrew to the forest and subjected himself to severe austerities. In mythological time, he meditated for millennia, denying himself food and breath, striving to break the limits of human capability. His goal was not to conquer lands, but to attain the status of Brahma Rishi. In a state of profound trance, on the edge of life and death, Vishvamitra attuned his consciousness to the purity of Surya. But he did not see light, he heard light. This is a complex concept for modern understanding, but in Vedic tradition, light and sound are two sides of the same coin. The vibration of photons was translated by his mind into sound vibration. Surya, in the form of Savitra, transmitted to him a code made up of 24 syllables. Thus, the Gayatri Mantra was born. Its translation is multifaceted, but the essence is this. We meditate on the divine radiance of the awakener Savitra so that he may inspire and guide our minds. Notice the wording. Vishvamitra, once a king who could have asked the all-powerful sun for an invincible army, mountains of gold, or eternal youth, instead asks for thee. This word means intellect, understanding, insight. He asks not for a fish, but for a fishing rod. He asks for his mind to be tuned so that he can perceive reality without distortion. This was a revolutionary moment. Vishvamitra emerged from his meditation not with a weapon of mass destruction, but with a tool for mass enlightenment. The Gayatri Mantra is considered the mother of the Vedas. It is believed that within these 24 syllables lies the entire wisdom of sacred texts. If all books were to burn, as long as this mantra remained, the knowledge could be restored. Savitra here acts as a cosmic server, and Vishvamitra as the first hacker who downloaded a pure file of divine consciousness. And this file is not reserved for the chosen few. Although for centuries the mantra was passed quietly from father to son, its power lies in its universality. It is addressed to Surya, who shines equally on the righteous and the sinner. It is also interesting how this gift affected Vishvamitra's own status. By granting him this knowledge, Surya essentially legitimized his claims. One who has heard the voice of the sun cannot be merely a warrior. Even his eternal rival, Vasistha, was forced to recognize Vishvamitra as a Brahma Rishi. Sound accomplished what years of war could not. We often forget that Surya is the only deity directly connected to our cognitive process. Without light, there is no visual information and the brain works in vain. But Savitra is also the inner light. When we say, "I was enlightened," we unknowingly use a solar metaphor, acknowledging that a little sun has ignited in our mind. This story teaches us that the highest form of blessing is clarity. Earlier, we spoke of Satyajit, who received gold but perished due to intrigue because his mind was clouded by greed. Vishvamitra attained clarity and his name became immortal. Savitra does not solve your problems for you. He simply turns on the light in the room of your mind so you can find your own way out. Moreover, the meter in which this mantra is composed is called Gayatri. It is a special rhythm that, according to neurophysiological research and the teachings of yogis, has a unique effect on brain physiology. It calms chaotic waves and brings a person into a state of focus. In this way, Surya, through Vishvamitra, passed on to us a technology of self-regulation. We tend to think of the sun as a monolithic object, a single glowing sphere that changes its angle relative to the earth, causing the seasons to shift. However, ancient texts like the Vishnu Purana and the Bhagavata Purana present a far more complex celestial bureaucracy. According to these sources, Surya is not just a proper name, but a position occupied throughout the year by different divine personalities called Adityas. As we recall from the beginning, these are the sons of the mother goddess Aditi. Initially, there were 8, but in later traditions, their number settled at 12, matching the months of the year. The concept is elegant. Each month, a new team takes the solar chariot responsible for the weather, harvest, and the mood of people during that period. How does this work in practice? Surya does not travel alone. His chariot is like a mobile headquarters. Along with the chief deity of the month, certain sages, rishis, board the chariot, singing hymns. Gandharvas, the musicians, Apsaras, the dancers, Yakshas, nature spirits, Nagas, serpent beings, and even Rakshasas, demons, accompany them. Quite an extraordinary company, isn't it? Why would the sun need demons? The texts explain that the Rakshasas push the chariot from behind, providing raw driving force, while the sages lead from the front, charting the course with their wisdom. This is a beautiful metaphor for life. To move forward, both high ideals and raw, almost animal energy are necessary. Each of the 12 Adityas has a unique character, which we humans experience as seasonal changes. Take for example the spring months. Here, the Aditya named Aryaman reigns. His name means noble or companion. He is responsible for social bonds, marriages, and alliances. Accordingly, the spring sun does not scorch, it unites. It is gentle and encourages connection. Its task is to awaken nature and feelings without drying the soil. Then comes the hot summer, when Indra or Vivasvan takes the chariot. Though lists vary across texts, the essence remains the same. This is the stern warrior sun. Its light becomes aggressive and demanding of submission. This is the sun as a general, testing the world's resilience. During this time, we seek shade because direct contact with such power is dangerous. Particular attention deserves the Aditya named Parjanya, who governs the sun during the rainy season, the month of Shravan. It may seem paradoxical. Why would the rain god ride in the sun's chariot? But for the ancient mind, there was no contradiction. It is the sun that evaporates water from the oceans, lifting it up to fall as rain. Parjanya is the hidden sun, working like a pump. His heat is not meant to burn the skin, but to create clouds. We do not see his rays, but we feel his work through humidity and sultriness. And when it is time to gather the harvest and prepare for winter, Pushan takes the watch. This is a fascinating figure from the Vedic pantheon, often referred to as the nourisher. In the myths, Pushan is said to have no teeth. He lost them during a battle with Shiva, when Shiva disrupted Daksha's sacrifice. Because of this, Pushan only consumes soft food, like porridge. Metaphorically, this means that the winter sun is toothless. It shines but does not bite. It gives off a gentle golden light that is pleasant to the eye and warms without burning.
Pushan is also the protector of travelers and shepherds. He lights the way as the days grow shorter. There is also Mitra, who often works alongside Varuna. If Varuna represents the strict law of the night sky and the ocean, then Mitra embodies the daylight of friendship and solidarity. Mitra governs the time of year when communities must come together to survive or perform joint rituals. His light reaches into hearts, removing distrust. Why such a complex rotation of roles? The philosophy behind the 12 Adityas teaches acceptance of change. We cannot expect the winter sun to warm like the summer sun, just as we cannot expect Pushan to show the aggression of Indra. Each season has its own hero and its own energy. Nature is not bad, it is simply different. This difference is dictated by who holds the reins in the heavens at any given time. It's also important to note the role of the entourage. Each month, not only the Adityas, but also the serpents that bind the chariot's axle change. This indicates that the very structure of time relies on different types of energy. One month calls for wisdom, so the rishis take the lead. Another month calls for strength, activating the Rakshasas and Yakshas. The solar system is not a one-actor play, it's a complex orchestra. Interestingly, at the end of the cosmic cycle known as a kalpa, when the world is destined to be destroyed, all 12 Adityas appear in the sky simultaneously. Imagine the power of 12 suns shining at once. This is the fire of Samvartaka, which dries the universe to its core. But under normal circumstances, they follow a strict order, respecting each other's boundaries. This reveals that Surya is a collective consciousness. It is multifaceted. It can be gentle like Aryaman, generous like Pushan, and relentless like Indra. This makes Surya the perfect ruler of life, which itself consists of light and dark phases, cold and heat. We should be grateful for this variability, because eternal summer would kill us just as surely as eternal winter. However, despite this well-organized system of change, the celestial office is not always peaceful. We tend to see Indra and Surya as allies. Both represent the forces of light and fight against darkness. Yet ancient hymns from the Rig Veda preserve echoes of a conflict that nearly stopped time itself. The essence of this conflict lies in the nature of these deities. Indra is the lord of storms, master of rain and moisture. Surya is fire, heat, and dryness. Under normal conditions, they work together as part of the hydrological cycle. Surya evaporates water from the oceans, sometimes described as stealing it, and Indra returns it as rain. But what happens when Surya's heat becomes too intense, turning the earth into cracked crust and preventing clouds from forming? One lesser-known legend describes exactly this situation. There was a great drought. Surya, at the height of his power, shone so fiercely it seemed he intended to drain all moisture from the world. People and animals were suffering. At this moment, a sage named Kutsa appeared. He was a devotee of Indra and pleaded for help. Kutsa complained that Surya had become a tyrant whose light no longer gave life but took it away. Indra, hearing the pleas of his follower and likely concerned about the imbalance, decided to intervene. But how do you stop one who moves at the speed of light and whose chariot has no brakes? Diplomacy was useless here. Indra, a warrior god, chose a forceful solution. The texts describe a scene reminiscent of a disaster movie. Indra, armed with his thunderbolt, intercepted Surya's chariot in the sky. This was not a duel, but an attempt to physically block the sun's movement. Surya, guided by his charioteer Aruna, was not about to stop. The horses charged forward, and then Indra did something that is interpreted in different ways. he tore off one of the wheels of Surya's chariot. The Rig Veda contains mysterious verses about how Indra stole Surya's wheel to protect Kutsa. Imagine this scene. A massive axle breaks, the chariot tilts, and the perfect circle of movement is disrupted. Surya is forced to slow down. His fury is checked. Taking advantage of this pause and the weakened heat, Indra summons the long-awaited rain. Water triumphs over fire. Storm clouds cover the wounded sun, and the earth gets a reprieve. But this myth is deeper than a mere battle over weather. It describes a solar eclipse or the change of seasons. The tearing off of the wheel is a metaphor for the sun's turning point, the moment when the day begins to shorten, giving way to the rainy season or winter. Indra here is not an aggressor, but a regulator, reminding Surya that absolute power is destructive. Even light must give way to darkness. If the sun shone endlessly at full strength, life would perish from dehydration. For the world to flourish, the sun must sometimes be overcome by clouds. Interestingly, this story includes another character, Atasha. He's one of Surya's horses, or in some interpretations, his assistant. When Indra attacked the chariot, Atasha tried to resist, but was thrown back. This highlights the hierarchy. Even divine horses cannot stand against the will of the King of Gods when the order of the world is at stake. The relationship between Indra and Surya is filled with hidden tension. Indra envies Surya because the sun's cult is more stable and understandable to people than the capricious storm cult. Surya, in turn, must obey Indra as king, even though he does most of the hard work sustaining life on earth. The story of the broken wheel is a moment when hierarchy is restored through force. This tale reminds us of the system of checks and balances in nature. We often complain about bad weather, prolonged rains, or storms, but mythology tells us this is a blessing. It is Indra who holds Surya in check. Without this conflict, without the eternal struggle between fire and water, our planet would become a lifeless desert like Mars. The wheel was either returned to its place or repaired by Surya himself. The story does not say. The sun's journey continued, but a lesson was learned. No one can shine alone. Yet Surya's affairs are not limited to those who govern life, but also involve those who govern its end. Surya, the giver of life, has a son whose role is to take life away. This is Yama, the god of death and lord of justice. The relationship is one of the most complex and dramatic in Indian mythology, representing two poles of existence, beginning and end, light and darkness. The father sets the clock in motion, and the son stops it. According to the texts, Yama was the first being to die, paving the way to the afterlife for all others. He became the pioneer of death. But before becoming an impartial judge, Yama underwent a harsh lesson within his own family, which shaped his destiny. This story is directly connected to his father Surya and his stepmother Chaya. As mentioned in the lecture about Shani, Yama was once an ordinary child, but with a keen sense of justice. He noticed that his mother, as he thought at the time, behaved strangely. She showered affection on her biological son Shani, but often ignored Yama and his sister, sometimes even withholding food. Being straightforward and quick-tempered, Yama could not tolerate such treatment. One day, when Chaya again refused him a meal, giving everything to the younger child, Yama lost his temper. In a burst of childish anger and hunger, he threatened to strike her. In Vedic tradition, raising a foot against a parent is considered a terrible offense. Chaya's reaction was immediate and disproportionately severe. She cursed him with words along the lines of, "Since you dared to raise your foot against me, may it wither away, consumed by worms and sores."
It's certainly an unusual response from a mother to a hungry child's outburst. Frightened by this terrible curse, Yama ran to his father. Surya, after hearing his son's story, immediately understood what had happened. This incident opened his eyes to the situation at home. He told Yama a crucial phrase: "My son, a true mother would never curse her child so harshly even if he made a mistake." This proved that Chaya was not his real mother. However, there was a legal dilemma. The curse had already been spoken and carried a power that even the sun god could not completely undo. Surya couldn't simply erase Chaya's words, but he could lessen their impact. Acting like a divine surgeon, Surya said, "I cannot cancel the curse, but I will alter its effect. The worms will consume only the flesh of your foot, but the foot itself will be saved and will heal." Thus, Surya saved his son from total disability, but left him with a reminder that anger must be controlled. The scar on Yama's foot and the trauma he endured shaped him into the ruler of law he became. He personally experienced injustice from a stepmother and the certainty of punishment for one's own wrongdoing. From that time on, father and son worked in tandem, but from a distance. Surya is the all-seeing witness. During the day, while the sun shines, he records all human actions. After a person's death, these records are passed to Yama's domain for judgment. Surya provides the light so we can act, and Yama delivers the final verdict on those actions. Interestingly, they cannot physically be near each other. Surya represents life and heat, while Yama embodies cold and the afterlife. If Surya were to enter Yama's realm, shadows would vanish and the mechanism of death would break down. During the Dakshina period, when the sun moves southward, Surya only bows toward his son's domain, showing respect but never crossing the threshold of Yama's house. This story teaches us that even in divine families, justice is forged through hardship. Yama became the perfect judge precisely because he was once wronged and saved by his father's wisdom. While Surya learned to maintain at least some diplomatic relations with his own divine relatives and colleagues, the next challenge came from an unexpected source. We tend to think of mountains as just lifeless stone masses, mere backdrops to human history. But in Indian mythology, geology has consciousness, ambitions, and, unfortunately, wounded pride. One day, a geological formation decided it was more important than the source of light. This was the Vindhya mountain range, a real mountain chain that geographically divides the Indian subcontinent into north and south. In ancient times, these mountains were much more difficult to cross and, according to legend, had a bad temper. The root of the conflict was simple envy. At the center of cosmology stood the sacred Mount Meru, the axis of the universe, the golden peak around which all celestial bodies, including Surya, revolve. Surya, on his daily journey, respectfully bowed before Meru and circled it. Vindhya watched this for millennia, and at some point it lost patience. Vindhya asked, "Why does Surya pay such homage to Meru? Am I less? Am I less majestic? Why doesn't he circle me?" Pride is a dangerous thing, especially when you weigh billions of tons. Vindhya demanded that Surya change his path and circle around her instead. Surya naturally refused. He explained that his route was not a matter of personal preference, but universal law. Meru is the center, and Vindhya is just part of the landscape, albeit a beautiful one. Surya's answer struck a nerve, and Vindhya began to grow. This was not a process stretched over geological ages. The mountain rose into the sky at an alarming speed. Its peaks pierced the clouds until they blocked the sun's path. Surya was trapped. He could not physically leap over the wall, growing higher and higher. The situation became catastrophic. On one side of the range, eternal night fell. Cold, darkness, and crop failure. On the other side, where Surya was stuck, unbearable heat scorched everything alive. Time stopped because without the sun's movement, there were no hours, days, or seasons. The world froze in agony. The gods, seeing this chaos, were at a loss. Using force against the mountain was pointless. Vindhya drew its power from the earth itself. What was needed was not strength, but wisdom and authority. Then the gods remembered a sage named Agastya. Agastya was legendary. Described as very small in stature, this created a humorous contrast with his immense spiritual power. He was famous for drinking an entire ocean to help the gods find hidden demons. If anyone could negotiate with a mountain, it was him. Agastya lived in the north. At the god's request, he gathered his modest belongings and traveled south to the base of the raging mountain. When Vindhya saw the great sage approaching, its anger turned to awe. In Vedic culture, respect for a teacher is an automatic reflex. Even mountains know etiquette. Understanding that the great Agastya stood before her, Vindhya could not look down on him. That would be the height of disrespect. So the mountain began to shrink, bowing its peaks all the way to the ground in a deep gesture of respect, allowing the sage to pass. At that moment, the path opened for Surya. Light poured back into the darkened half of the world. Agastya approached the bowed mountain and said, "O mighty Vindhya, I thank you for your respect. I am heading south on business. Please remain in this bowed position until I return. Then you may rise again if you wish." Vindhya, flattered by the sage's attention and bound by his word, agreed. She stayed low, becoming a passable range. Agastya crossed the pass and went south. The catch was that the sage never planned to return. He settled permanently in southern India, becoming the father of Tamil culture and language. Vindhya still waits. It cannot break its promise to Brahman and raise its head. Thanks to this cleverness, Surya was able to continue his path unimpeded, evenly lighting both hemispheres of India. This myth elegantly explains a geographical fact. The Vindhya range is indeed much lower than the Himalayas. It looks old, worn down, and pressed close to the earth. For Surya, this episode was a lesson that even his divine power is not enough to overcome raw matter when it decides to resist. Sometimes, light needs someone small and wise simply to ask obstacles to step aside. Agastya cleared the way not with a sword, but with authority. This legend also symbolizes India's cultural unity. Surya connects north and south with his light, and Agastya connected them with his wisdom, removing the barrier that threatened to split the continent. The mountains humbled themselves, the sun continued its journey, and as this journey goes on, day after day, year after year, a logical question arises. How does all this cosmic movement affect us personally? We've talked a lot about myths, ancient gods, curses, and celestial intrigues, but we haven't yet touched on Surya's influence on an ordinary person living their everyday life. And this influence is in fact enormous. In Vedic astrology, known as Jyotish, Surya is not just a massive celestial body. He holds the title of Atmakaraka, which translates as the indicator of the soul itself. The sun governs our inner ego, that invisible core that prevents a person from breaking under the weight of life's challenges. Physiologically, it controls the heart, vision, and spine. So if the sun is weak in your horoscope, no matter how many motivational books you read or trendy workshops you attend, you will still critically lack self-confidence. Such individuals often seek external support, fear taking responsibility, and struggle to establish personal boundaries. Figuratively speaking, they simply lack a backbone. On the other hand, a strong sun bestows a person with a regal posture, inner dignity, and natural leadership qualities. These are the people who enter a room and seem to illuminate it instantly. Others are instinctively drawn to them, expecting guidance and decisions. Moreover, the sun always symbolizes the father figure. The nature of your relationship with your father, whether filled with hurt or deep respect, directly influences your interactions with society, the state, and any authority figures. There is also an interesting connection between the sun and our body's health. The sun governs not only overall vitality, but also digestion, representing the internal fire that converts food into pure energy. When this fire is weak, a person suffers from apathy and weakness. So the sun's light works on every level. In the cosmos, it evaporates oceans. Within us, it breaks down matter, giving us strength. The sun within the body is literally the spark that gets us out of bed in the morning, pushing us to overcome laziness and accomplish feats, even if that feat is just a routine trip to work. A weak planet can be strengthened not only through complex chants, but also through simple daily discipline. Rising early before dawn, being punctual, showing respect to elders, and maintaining good posture. After all, the spine is our inner axis, just like Mount Meru is the axis of the universe. When we slouch, we metaphorically block the flow of solar energy within ourselves. But everything that has a beginning must come to an end. Every morning, we genuinely rejoice at the sunrise. Yet, on a cosmic scale, the number of these sunrises is strictly limited. Indian cosmology does not tolerate eternal stasis. When a kalpa, the vast cosmic cycle equivalent to one day of the creator Brahma, ends, a process called pralaya, or great dissolution, begins. And most strikingly, our hero, the sun, plays the most awe-inspiring and fearsome role in this grand scenario. The gentle warmth that has nourished plants and warmed the planet for millennia receives a new directive. It ceases to be a benefactor. Texts describe that during Pralaya, the sun transforms into the fire called Samvartaka. This is no ordinary sun. It becomes an absolute cosmic purifier. As we know from the story of seasonal changes, only one of the 12 Adityas rules the world at a time, following a strict schedule, carefully taking turns and regulating heat. But at the very end of time, this celestial discipline breaks down. All 12 forms of the sun appear in the sky simultaneously. Enduring the heat of even one sun at midday can be unbearable. Now imagine a dozen blazing spheres high above. Their combined heat causes the world's oceans to boil away. The water that has quenched the earth for centuries evaporates completely. The fire of Samvartaka penetrates the deepest valleys, mercilessly drying up underground springs. The earth cracks, turning into scorched wasteland. Rocks melt, and once proud mountains crumble into dust under monstrous radiation. This sounds like a grim apocalypse, but in this destructive force, there is no malice or revenge. The sun does not punish. It simply performs a necessary cleansing function. To build a new world, the old one must be cleared away, the forms that have lived their time. This is a great sterilization of space. By drying everything to the very depths, the sun prepares the stage for the next phases of dissolution, when ash will be washed away by primordial waters. After this fire, heavy storm clouds always follow, pouring continuous cosmic rain that floods the remnants of the destroyed world, turning it into a boundless ocean of potential. Paradoxically, the one who once gave life is the one who takes it away. This teaches us absolute detachment. We desperately cling to material things, our homes, statuses, even our physical bodies, forgetting that one day all of this will turn to gray ash under the rays of Samvartaka. It is remarkable how ancient mythology intertwines with modern astrophysics. Science tells us that in a few billion years, our native star will exhaust its hydrogen fuel and become a red giant. It will expand, engulf the orbits of nearby planets, and evaporate Earth's oceans. The ancient sages, without telescopes, described this process with astonishing accuracy. They intuitively knew that the light which created our biological form would one day consume it. However, this picture of destruction should not bring despair. The sun destroys only the material framework of the world. The very spark, the inner Atmakaraka we spoke of, remains untouched. The external sun disappears to make way for a great cosmic pause. But the inner sun of a person, their true nature, is not affected even by the fire of Pralaya. What appears to be the end of an era is actually a transition to a different state of freedom. Every sunset, even the final sunset of the universe, is simply a promise of a new dawn that will surely come. So cherish your inner sun and don't let passing shadows dim your personal spark. This concludes our journey through the rays of the great luminary. Keep your mind clear, and until we meet again. You've been watching Ancient Secrets. Thanks for watching and have a great day.